Hi, my name's Leonie Bolt, and I went from high school troublemaker and long-time backpacker to accidental entrepreneur. After 15 years working as a professional photographer and running my own studio, I grew into becoming a personal empowerment and business mentor to help other women to follow their passions and find their purpose too. I've learned to pave my own way through life, and now I empower others to do the same, to break through their limiting beliefs and empower them to shine. Welcome to the Empowered to Shine podcast, where we dive deep into creating a life by your own design. Hello, and welcome back to the Empowered to Shine podcast. Our guest today is Olivia Charlet, and she is an emotional wellbeing mentor. She helps women through their emotional growth journey, which is something that has been a theme throughout this podcast. We're dealing with a lot of emotions, and I guess as women, that's something that we naturally do a lot more than men, I guess. So Olivia, tell us a little bit about you and what's brought you to this point in your life.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So in terms of what's gotten me here, I started like a lot of people, which was down the corporate route. I started in finance, working at Bloomberg in London when I was 22 years old. And I think like a lot of people, I didn't really know what else was available. I kind of thought, of course, like you just sort of go down this sort of corporate route and you make good money and you just basically work a lot, and it's really challenging and you learn a lot. But I basically realized after about a year or two, and I think a lot of people experience this as well, is I realized that I wanted a lot more, like I wanted to make a much bigger impact on people. I wanted to be able to, as silly as it sounds, I really wanted to feel like what I was doing was meaningful and was going to have a long-term effect on other people. And at the time in finance, I just really didn't feel like that's what I was doing. So I quit the job after 3 years and I did a master's in psychology, and that kind of opened my eyes to starting to think about what else I could be doing in the world. And I remember I interviewed 50 people or something on LinkedIn and Facebook, friends of friends, other connections. And I found out that I was basically just trying to see like what people do, like what kinds of jobs are out there, what kinds of nonprofits, businesses, you name it. I was just sort of really curious. And I found this guy who did coaching, and I was like, oh, what's coaching? And he explained it to me. And I still didn't really understand what it was. And I was just a bit like, but I was interested. I was curious. I was like fascinated, but I was like, I still don't really get it. And he said, go to this free coaching weekend in London. It's coming up next month. He said, just go to it, experience it, because that's probably the best way to really understand what coaching is. And that was my first, it was such a transformational weekend. And looking back, it was actually quite simple. We really just dug into our passions, our desires, our belief systems, our thought processes. But it's because I had never done that in my entire life. And I think at that time I was probably like 25, 26 years old. And I was just blown away by what you could like uncover of yourself, and then also uncover obviously about others. So that basically led me on to start this business where I focus around, mindset and looking at people's belief systems, their thinking patterns, their habits, and really helping, female business owners get to that next level. But that's how I started it. I didn't even know what coaching was before. So yeah, it's just funny how things just sort of, it is really crazy when you think back and you're like, oh my gosh, if I hadn't met that person, I might not be where I am today. So it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah. And I love listening to everybody's stories because they're all similar in a way. You do what you think you should be doing.
Yes.
You get the approval of your parents and you follow the path and you go and get a degree, and then you go, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. This isn't what I signed up for. What else is out there? And you delve into that other side that's totally not academic, but that focuses on growth in a whole nother level. And I think that's really exciting because all of the women that have been on this podcast have been through that journey in one way or another, not necessarily corporate, but, doing what they think they should be doing. and
Yes.
then life just takes you where you're meant to go, and that's really exciting.
Yes. And looking back, I'm so grateful that 25-year-old, because I'm 32 now, I'm so grateful that 25-year-old was willing to take the risk to do something new and to do something different, because there's that fallacy around, like, once you've invested a lot of your time, your training, your schooling, your qualifications into a specific area of your life, you kind of feel like, what, I'm going to start over now. I'm going to like start fresh. And like, that means starting from the beginning and being a novice again at something. And that's incredibly scary. So I'm really glad that I was willing to go there, because I know that a lot of people are so scared to start again, whether it's in a business or whether it's in another area. And I just feel like it's a real shame. And I feel like, you know, there's a lot of pressure in society to get to a certain level, whatever that level even means or what it is. But yeah, so yeah.
But the problem is you get to that level and then you go, well, what's next? If there's no, like, if you're climbing the corporate ladder and there's nowhere else to go, especially as a woman, you know that when you kind of peak and the people above you, you're never going to kind of get into that level. You go, well, I've gone as far as I can, and it's totally not what I signed up for. You know, I'm flogging myself, you know, doing all these extra hours. I don't have a life. Yeah, I'm earning good money, but what for?
It 100%. And it's so funny because at the time when I was like 22 or whatever, and then 23, 24, it was in the beginning, it was great to, you know, money is important, right? So it's really amazing to be able to make money and not have to worry. You know, during those 3 years, I didn't have to worry about money in any way, shape, or form because I was working in finance. But then what's exactly what you said is, like, at some point you have all this, you've got money, you've got savings, you've got more than enough to not worry about taking a holiday, or, you know, if you need to buy a car or something like that. But it's almost like you realize that really doesn't cut it. It really doesn't cut it. And it's just sort of like, then it's just there. And you realize that actually the juice is from like how you feel on a day-to-day basis, and like whether or not things feel fulfilling and purposeful, because otherwise it's so empty. Like, I started feeling so like empty, like nothing mattered and it didn't mean anything. And yeah, it's just a really scary thing. But like, I just know so many people are still in that position today. So just that makes me really sad. But yeah.
So that's really important when you finally sit down and you work out what your values are and you decide, okay, because I know for myself, I don't value things and, you know, consumerism. That actually kind of really bugs me. I really hate getting all of these gifts at Christmas that are completely useless to me. I'd rather have someone, you know, take me out to dinner, or, you know, experiences are really high on my values list, and growth is really high on my values list. So if you're in that position where you're working a job and you're not getting those things, then your life does feel really empty, doesn't it?
Spot on. And it's funny that you say that. I feel the same way as you do about the whole Christmas thing. I really get uncomfortable about just receiving things or even giving like things, exactly as you said. Like, for me, experience is everything. Like the quality of time, like quality with humans that you love and that you connect with, or like impactful work. But you're exactly right. Like, if you're not living by your values, and we don't get taught this in school, and I know we talk about that a lot, just you hear that all the time, but it's true. Like, you don't get taught like, what are your values and what does matter to you, because every individual is so unique and is so different. And I think that's why it can't just fit for everyone. You can't just be like, cool, I'm just going to put this person in here and it's going to fit. Because everyone has such specific interests and values and what they care about and what matters to them. But like you said, like, we need to know what those are to actually be able to then make better choices for ourselves and feel more, like, just feel happier in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Olivia, how do you help the women that you work with?
So one of the big things that I do is I work specifically with female business owners, because I love working with women who are chasing their dreams. And like you, growth is so important to me. And what I've found is that women entrepreneurs are the kinds of people who are just constantly on the search to improve, to grow, to develop themselves. And they have a hunger for it and a drive for it. And I love that, because it's obviously super appealing and it's a lot of fun and very energizing to work with women like that. So I work with them. And specifically what I work on is every business owner that I see has a particular goal. Usually, especially in business, it's like a financial goal. So it might be to like, make six figures for the first time in their beauty salon, or it might be getting a certain number of products sold for their Etsy shop. It's like they've got a goal in mind. And often, and I've definitely experienced this myself in the last 6 years of running my business, but often we are in some way, shape, or form holding ourselves back or slowing ourselves down from being able to achieve that particular business goal. So what I help them do is I walk in, and whether it's nowadays, I do a lot of teaching, but I still do a bit of coaching as well. But basically I walk in and I really help them understand what are the belief systems that they're currently holding that are slowing them down or limiting them from accelerating their progress to actually achieving that particular business goal or money goal or financial goal, whatever it is. And then I also help them look at what are the little thinking patterns that happen throughout the day that take them away, that move them away from moving towards the goal. And we don't realize how much we do this throughout the day. Like, it can be a Tuesday, and before you know it, you're doing laundry and it's 11 a.m. and you didn't even realize that that's what you were doing. But again, it's because you've had thoughts that have happened, like literally automatic thoughts that have happened that morning that pulled you to go do laundry at 11 a.m. when really what you potentially want to be doing is making some serious strides and progress towards your business goal. So what I help them look at is, what are your belief systems? What are you believing that's holding you back, slowing you down towards achieving that goal? What are the little thinking patterns throughout like a Tuesday or a Wednesday that just basically get you not to get to your goal? And there's so many of those. And I think the worst part about these little thoughts is that they're so hard to catch, especially in the beginning. The more practice you get with it, the easier it becomes. But they just happen so quickly that sometimes you don't even realize that you spent the whole day and you haven't done anything really productive, like whether it's marketing activities or sales activities. So we really look at that. And then the third thing we look at are the actual action habits, because obviously our lives and the results that we have are made up of what we do on a regular basis. It's not what you do once that's going to give you like that sustainable long-term profit. It's what you do daily or regularly or weekly. So we really look at it as well, like, what are their habits and why are those their habits? Do we need to change them? Do we need to tweak them? Do we need to modify them? And how can we then also like stick to them? Because there's a whole science to actually sticking to habits. So that's what I work on, and I'm in love with it, and it's just epic. And it's so great when you feel like people are like breaking free and like up leveling and getting to that next level. That's the coolest, because again, it's growth. It's not even about hitting the goal. Like, that's really awesome and super freaking cool. But I think Tony Robbins said, like, life is really about progress. Like, if we're progressing and we feel like we're actually making tangible improvements, that's when we feel really happy. And I think that's so true in my life. I'm sure in your life, in my clients' lives, it's just feeling like, yes, things are changing. Like, it might be small, it might be gradual, it might be bit by bit, but it feels so good to be like, yes, like I've, doubled my sales, or yes, I've increased the number of leads this month. Like, that feels amazing, because you feel like my actions and my thoughts are moving me towards the life I want, towards the business I want. And that feels incredible.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about goals, is it doesn't matter what your goal is. When you get there, there's always like, oh, well, I did that. What's next? And there's another thing. So it's really important, if you do have these big goals, to celebrate the little things along the way. Like you said, like, I've got, a couple of new clients this week. Great. Let's celebrate that, instead of going, oh, I didn't make the $20,000 that I was planning on making.
But that one is the biggest, like, Leonie, that is such a big one. And I think, because I've been in business for 6 years, and I know you've been in business for a lot longer than I have as well. It's funny how in the beginning, that kind of stuff, like, it really gets you down, like when you don't hit a goal. And there are so many times I haven't hit a goal because I always like set huge goals. I've always been like that. So like there have been so many times where I haven't hit them, but like you said, it's funny because like over the years you start realizing it's so much more powerful to acknowledge the little things. Like, even if you get a new email subscriber in the beginning, that's incredible. Or in the beginning when you just get like your website comes up and like you've had 2 people actually view your website, like that. it sounds so silly and it's small, but it's a big deal because you're actually making change. You're creating something out of nothing.
That's right. And when you have that consistent action, those tiny little things just grow and snowball. So I like to explain it. It's like a snowball, you start really small and then add to it and add to it. And all of a sudden it's got so much momentum, it falls down the hill and you can't even catch it. And it's just that regular, consistent action that makes it worthwhile. Like you said before, if you just do something once and then give up, it's not going to have any effect. It's like going to the gym one time and expecting to be fit and healthy.
I always think about that because I'm so lucky. My parents were really big exercise people, big sports people since the beginning. Thank God, because I just picked that habit up. So I've never really had to work in it. And so for me, when I think about having a healthy body, strong body, healthy body, it's like it's an everyday thing. It's not just like it's a Tuesday thing, or like it's just an everyday thing. Like in my head, it's not even a question. It's of course I move my body, whether it's yoga, whether it's strength, whether it's whatever. And in business, it's the same thing. And in life, like in any area of your life, you can look at like, what am I doing regularly? And also, what am I not doing regularly? Like if you're upset with your love life, for example, and yet you look at your week and you're not doing anything explicitly to grow that, then in a way, like how can you be it's funny how sometimes as humans, and I've done this so many times, but you get very frustrated with the external result. Like you're like, look at your bank account and you get angry, or you look at your love life and you're frustrated, or you look at the number of clients that you have at the end of the month and you're just like, oh, like you just really feel annoyed at yourself. Maybe you feel embarrassed. Maybe you feel like you're falling behind in life or whatever it might be. But the irony is that's like the lag. James Clear talks about this really beautifully, but like it's basically like that's the lag. Like you can't change it once it's already there. So instead, you got to look at, okay, well, what were the daily and weekly habits I've had that have brought this result, and then what do I need to change to bring in a new result? There's no point trying to be like angry at the result, like at the bank account, because the bank account's it's a dead thing. It's not like a real live thing. Do you know what I mean? So I think a lot of times we get so angry at the external result as opposed to looking at, well, what are the beliefs and the habits that I had in place that created this?
Absolutely. And there's always that Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule, 80% of your results are from 20% of your actions. So if you're spending all day perfecting, your website and doing beautiful graphics in Canva to post on social media and not getting on the phone, that's been contributing to your results.
Yes. I mean, that's like it's so funny because my husband started a business recently. Actually, it's been a few months now. And in the beginning, I noticed him doing more around like the planning and the researching and like the, updating and stuff. And I really noticed myself. It was really tough because obviously like I was super excited for him, but I knew from personal experience that those things are just minor and actually they should be done after, right? The first things that we want to look at are like marketing activities, sales activities. And then, yes, of course, it's great to do all the other little bits and pieces, but those should really be secondary. But yeah, it's so true that in the beginning of business, like, I mean, I'm sure later down the track, some people as well, just spending so many hours doing all this other stuff that's not actually moving the needle forward.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you're running a business, marketing and sales needs to be first and foremost of your to-do list, and probably 60% at least of what you're doing. Even if you're busy, if you let go of those things, you'll be busy, and then you realize, oh, why have I got no clients this week? Because you didn't have time. So when you're busy, obviously you can delegate and you can build your team, and you can go, okay, well, if I'm not doing the marketing and sales, I'm not getting the business in the door.
100%.
Absolutely. So you do your work with women in what you call a safe container. Tell me a little bit about how that works.
So the truth is, I think I always think about myself and when I've done work on myself. So personal development work, self-help books. I've had a lot of coaches over the last 6 years. And I think personally, it's so critical for us to feel like we're not being judged And I think especially when we're looking to achieve really big things, particularly in our business or in our lives, it's even more confronting and like really, really scary. And sometimes, in our lives growing up, we've had a lot of people who've either judged us, made fun of us, said little things. Like everyone's gone through something, whether it's their parents, whether it's something that happened at school, whether it's an aunt that said something. So I think when I'm working with clients, one of the keys is for them to feel like they're not going to ever be judged for who they are, for what they want, and also through like what they're going through right now in this moment. Because I think we're all like, what's the right word? Like we're all constantly growing and changing and learning, and we're not meant to be getting it right. Like I really believe in like imperfection, like fully and completely. And so I think in terms of it being a safe container, it's really just making sure that people feel like they can grow and they won't be judged. And weirdly enough, so something that I found both when I was involved in masterminds, and then when I had a whole bunch of business owners in masterminds of mine, or my membership tribe, which is my membership program, what I find is that when you feel like you are backed by someone else, and you're supported by them, and they believe in you, and they're non-judgmental, and they've created this like beautiful safe space for you, that's when it's so much easier to just jump, to take these like big leaps of faith and like take risk and try things out, because you just have this like weird newfound confidence. And it's funny because it's not like it's really coming from you. I feel like it's coming from like the collective, or from being in a group of other women, or maybe it's one-on-one, depending on what kind of program it is. But it's like when you've got somebody like that backing you, I feel like you're better able to do the scary things that are truly aligned with what your vision is, your dream, your calling, your goal. And I think that's what accelerates things so much quicker as well, because you've got that person. And I've always noticed when I hired my own coach and I had like a one-on-one coach, and then when I took it off, I noticed like a shift. And it's more of like an energetic thing, because it's almost like they're holding you energetically. And you just feel like this insane level of support. It's kind of maybe, I mean, for those people who play sports, I play a lot of sports myself, like when you've got like a soccer coach, it's like you feel weirdly backed and supported by them, even if they're not there with you in that moment. You just energetically feel it. And that, I think it's just,
Yeah, it's so true, especially, when you're in that community of like-minded people all trying to achieve similar things. You've got each other to back each other up. Like I'm in a mastermind at the moment, and our group and our weekly calls, and it's like, okay, what did you do this week? And what did you do this week? And, it's just, you build that energy together, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's in a group. But either way, community is something that we all need to help us achieve our goals, I believe.
Yeah. And it's like, I think in the past, I was like, oh, well, if you've got your partner, like I'm in love with my partner and we've been together for 7 years. So you're like, oh, but I've already got like my, romantic partner, or I've already got like my best friends, or I've already got, maybe you have a close relationship with your sibling or your parents or whatever. But the weird thing is, I just don't think that's the same thing at all. I think what you said, like people who are kind of on the same wavelength and going after a similar goal, even if it's in different businesses or different areas of life, it's just like people who are on the same page. And like you said, then you can ask each other and inspire each other. I remember being so inspired by the other women who I like was in with the mastermind, just because I was like, it would just, I don't know, it would just like gear me up. And I was like, oh, now like I have to do it. And it wasn't like a competitive thing, because we were also like, we really loved each other. And it was like very much like, it was an incredible space to be in. But it really made me feel like, like I need to go out there now and like freaking do this thing. So yeah, it's just amazing. And I don't think people realize to what extent the energetics like of it has an impact on their day to day.
Absolutely. And you're celebrating each other's wins too, which makes it more exciting. Like if you're posting in a group and everybody else is like, well done, congratulations, but then you go home and you say to your husband, I did this today. And they're like,
yeah, exactly. Because sometimes your husband, like now my husband started a business. So now it's so funny, because when I started my business 6 years ago, sometimes I'd come home and I'd be like, oh my God, I just did this, or I just made this amount of money, or I just like got this new client or whatever. And he, don't get me wrong, he was happy for me, but he couldn't fully understand the power or the value of that. Whereas now it's so interesting because he started his business like whenever it was, like 6 months ago or something. And now it's like he really gets it. Like he knows, he understands now that like getting one additional paying client or getting to that next income goal or growing your, you know, leads and prospect base to a certain level, it means something, because it's not just that number, it's all of the work that's come before it that was that enabled you to create that. So now it's like, it's so different, but it's true. At the beginning, I remember like I would tell my sister, I'd tell my brother, I would tell my parents, I'd tell my friends, and nobody really got it because it was just like, well, they didn't run a business. So like, how could you get, it's hard, you know, because you're not really, they haven't been through it themselves. So they don't know what it requires, like how much grit it requires and how much persistence and just consistency. And when you've been in business, you realize, okay, if that person has that result, they will spend years and effort and like sweat and tears and whatever to hit that. It's like a really big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, because no, my husband doesn't have his own business, but I've been in business the whole time we've been together, basically. Right. And, you know, like I'd go, oh, I did this today. And he'd go, yeah, but how much money did you make? And I'm like, but that's
not the point. Oh God, that's the worst.
But then I launched the podcast and he brought me flowers that night and I was so stunned because it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like a money-making activity, but I was like, maybe he gets it. At least he's trying.
Oh my God. I remember, it's so funny that you mentioned that. I remember when I started my business 6 years ago, my dad, whenever I'd get on the phone with him, and him and I have always had a relationship around like careers as well a little bit, but also around other things, which is beautiful. But he would always ask me whenever I'd get on the phone with him, like at the end of the week on like a Sunday night, we'd have our phone call with like my parents. And he'd be like, oh, so like, did you get a client? Like, how much money did you make this week? And the answer was always, no, I didn't make a client. I didn't get a client, because in the beginning, anyone knows this who's been running a business, it's about people getting to know you and building relationships and nurturing them and then adding massive value. And people are not just going to buy from like literally like, you know, if you're literally coming onto the scene, nobody knows who you are, you don't have any social proof, your products and services are not well known, you don't have any referrals coming in, you don't even have maybe a network or leads or prospects or anything like that, like you're not going to be getting clients that first week or that first month or whatever. And it was I remember feeling so embarrassed because every week I had to say no, and every week he'd ask the same question, and I was like, Dad, at some point I was like, you're going to have to stop asking that question because it's just driving me nuts. And I know it was obviously coming from a good place. He wanted me to succeed. He wanted me to do really well in my business, and he was excited, and that's super cool. But, and you'll know this, is like in the beginning, that's the last thing you need, you know, because you're focusing on so many other things and you wish you could get clients. That's like the first thing you'd obviously want, and you want to be making money and it's not happening, and you just don't need that additional pressure. Because I think especially as women, well, I think men as well, actually, to be fair, now that I think about my husband, but I think humans in general, we put such high expectations on ourselves, and, you know, we're already putting that pressure. We don't need it from like all the other sides. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, you want to play the long game. You want to build those relationships. You want to build those solid foundations, because if you don't have that, you know, if you do get super busy, I've seen it time and time again, especially when people are undercharging and they're, you know, undercutting everyone else in their market, and all of a sudden they've got all these clients, but they don't have the foundations to actually make that work. And they're not charging enough to ask for help for anybody else. And, you know, at the end of the day, they upset all of their clients and they end up on the news, and, you know, it's an absolute disaster. So it's really important to actually play the long game.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to play the long game because of society and how we're kind of taught to believe that we should get instantaneous results. And you only ever hear about somebody's success once they're like on the podium, like that professional athlete, or once the like team has like won the championship. You don't hear about it when they're up at, you know, 4 or 5 in the morning, you know, swimming or working out when nobody else is like awake. You know what I mean? Like you never see the all of the years prior. You just see like when they actually win the X thing. And so I think as a result of that, it really makes you feel like everyone else is creating not necessarily overnight success, but it does feel like it's very fast. And as you said, like it's much more powerful to think about it as like a lifelong commitment to sustainable results, because I know I experienced that as well in my business. Like in the second year of my business, I had all of a sudden these like all these clients and stuff, and that was wonderful. But because I wasn't crystal clear on the foundations, I didn't really know how to scale it. So it's almost like I hit a bit of a ceiling, and I had a certain number of clients, and I was like, cool, like this is amazing. And I was making like really decent money for the second year of my business and stuff. But I felt like, how do I break through from this? I feel like super like stuck now here.
Yeah.
And it's because, like you said, like I just didn't have the foundations right. I didn't fully understand where I was getting it from. It was very fast and intense and a little crazy. And so now, like more recently, I've like rebuilt it and built in different systems and process and foundations. And granted, that also comes from experience. Like obviously, you're just sort of figuring it out as you go. But exactly as you put it, like it's more of a lifelong. I think Simon Sinek, he wrote a book on like the infinite game, and that it is an infinite game. Business is not just something where you like are just getting to the next year. Ideally it's an infinite game for the rest of your life. Like if it's the work that you really want to be doing and you don't want to sell off your business. Yeah,
absolutely. So Olivia, what's happening in your world moving forward? Is there anything that you want to share with everybody?
So moving forward, it's funny, as soon as you said that, what popped into my mind is like, I'm having a baby, because I'm like 8 months pregnant. That's obviously a pretty big thing, and I'm literally due in a couple weeks. So that's one thing, but business related. So I run an incredible membership program that I'm in love with. And it's really this incredible space where female business owners can come in and completely change their belief systems, their thinking patterns, their habits, as we were talking in the beginning, and also where they can be surrounded by other women who like get it, who are going to inspire them, who are going to cheer them on, and where I can be a cheerleader and like a support system and kind of like a motivator, because I know from personal experience, like business is an emotional roller coaster, and you can be so good with your habits, and you can be so good with your exercise and your health and your sleep and all that, and still business can kind of take you up and down, and there's ebbs and flows of your energy and your drive. And so the membership is also a really great space to just keep coming back in to gain like energy and excitement and just feel hungry again for what your goal is and making sure that you actually achieve it. So I'm in love with that space. And it's so funny because I started a membership site actually prior, but in the very beginning, I never had a membership site. And then I got obsessed with what we were talking about, which is like sustainable longer term results and making small changes that then add up and multiply and compound over time. And so that's what the membership's really about, is it's accessible to really any female business owners so that you can stay in there and grow and get gritty and like learn and develop and create those compounded sustainable results in your business. Because that's what I care about, because who cares if you could just get results for like 1 month? Like, what about all the other months of the year? That's and what about for your future in the next few years? Like, I really want people to feel like they've got the structures, they've got the foundation, they know what they're doing, and they're like, they feel strong about themselves. They know that regardless of what happens, they can create what they want in their business and they can achieve it because now they have the right belief systems, the right thinking habits. They've got tools and techniques that can constantly get them out of challenges and obstacles that'll come up. And then they can actually achieve their goals rather than it just being something that sounds cool or feels like a fun idea. So it's called the Bold Tribe. And I'm in love with it. And it's my favorite thing ever.
Fantastic. So where can everybody find you?
So best place is my website, so under oliviacharlet.com, or on Facebook. I'm there a lot on my Facebook business page. I also run a free Facebook group, so if you just want to come spend some time together and just get some value and learn a lot and also just be energized, that's a really great space to come and hang out.
Awesome. Well, fabulous. I've loved having this chat with you today. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being on the show.
Oh, you're so welcome, Leonie. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Shine podcast. My name's Leonie Bolt, and I'm glad that you were able to join us today. I hope you got some serious inspiration from today's episode. If you'd like to find more episodes, go to leoniebolt.com/podcasts or start subscribing on your favorite podcast streaming channel. I look forward to seeing you again soon.